Hello and welcome. You're viewing the Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. Welcome to Mesa County Compass. We're here this afternoon with Laurel. She is going to be running for City Council here in Grand Junction. She is running unopposed, but we would like to hear what her platform is and a little bit about her. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
And would you please start off by giving a little background information about yourself and then why you decided to run for City Council?
Sure. So I moved here in 2021, and I have lived in many different places all over the country, and when I got to Grand Junction, it just felt like home. Everybody was so kind and welcoming. I just loved everything about Grand Junction and decided that this is where I want to be forever. So so we moved here. We bought a house right before all the interest rates went through the roof.
Of course.
And it was very, very hard for us to get a house still because they were going like hotcakes. So it was very hard. We bought it where my realtor FaceTimed me through the house, and we hadn't actually seen it in person until after we closed on the house. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yes. That would be hard for me.
It was very hard for me. So we have lots of projects. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
That's all right.
Good. And we know that you're engaged.
Yes.
And, so your fiance is all on board with you running for city council and spending the rest of your life chained to the dais.
Yes, well, as much as he can be. Yeah. So he knows that I have a public service heart, and so when I see a way that I can make change in a good way, he knows that I'm going to try to do what I can. So I think he is on board with that. And we sat and looked at my calendar. I did cut out, some of the boards that I'm on and some of the other things that I'm doing that were time intensive. So that I could put more energy into City Council.
Yeah, because they say 20 to 25 hours a week, but I know Cody puts in even more than that, but he's very thorough.
Yes. He's also retired, so it makes
that makes a difference?
It does make it, well, he has more time. Well, he fills his time up, but he has a little bit more time, but I have already thought about ways that I can be available because that's something that's important to me. I've worked really closely with Cody over the past 2 years, and just being able to see how he takes time to listen to everyone and is accessible are things that I really would hope to be able to do as well.
That's really important.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. What is it that you do now?
Yes, that is important.
Yes.
So I actually moved here for the position of Executive Director with Habitat for Humanity.
Okay.
So we have been building homes for people between 30% and 80% of the area median income for the last 4 years. Well, we've been doing it for a long time, but I've been doing it for the last 4 years.
Okay, very good. That's kind of what I wanted to make sure that everybody heard about this because that is such a worthwhile organization.
It is, and it pulls the person into having ownership of that and pride in what they're doing. It's not giving, it's you're helping, and
it's a real hand up versus a hand out, which we say a lot with Habitat, but it really does help break the cycle of poverty. And again, the 30 to 80% of our area median income is not low income, it's just below average income. So these are people that are in our workforce and can't get housing and have been working very hard. And they do have a mortgage with Habitat. It's just a zero interest mortgage.
Oh, wow.
So
that is a wonderful thing. So just give us some more information about Habitat.
Yeah.
How do you determine how many people can you help? And
Yeah. So last year we were able to double the number of houses we built due to one-time funding from the state. This year we did go back to the 4 that we are able to self-sustain in our financing to be able to to build. So we are building 4 houses this year. Our goal is 6 houses next year, and then 8 the following year again.
Great.
So we were planning to slowly build up to 8, but with one-time funding, we were able to do it. That
So you got
last
your
year.
8 last year.
Yes. So we know we have the capacity to build them. We just need the money.
The funding.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how do you get your funding, and how do you get your volunteers to help with that?
So most of our funding and volunteers come from the community support. The majority of our funding is, again, through either personal donations, businesses, and then we are a Waldeck recipient, so we do receive, we're one of, I believe it's 8 or 9 nonprofits that receive annual income through that fund. So, yeah, and then our Restore is it's our major fundraiser source. So all of the profits that come from the Restore, they cover, first of all, our overhead, so that none of our donations are used for overhead. All of our positions and everything are covered. So, and then everything that it raises goes directly to construction.
That's wonderful.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Right.
It was one of the drawing points that brought me to Habitat.
And I know that you have a background, just an educational background in that. So can you tell us what that educational background is that makes you suited for that position? And also, because I was noticing on your Facebook, I've been on a lot of boards, and I'm like, okay, what boards and in what capacity, and how does that help you, do you think, in being a great candidate for city council?
Yeah. So my educational background, I have a bachelor's in education, and I have a master's in behavior analysis that I got at from Arizona State University. And I think both of those together, it was a lot of learning about human behavior and just ways to be able to create change. And so I think those were the first, it's kind of a first layer. But I do have a lot of experience in early childhood education, which surprisingly is not too much different from managing adults. So it's a lot of conflict resolution and helping people to be heard in what they're saying so you can find that middle ground. And so honestly, I think that experience really helped shape me as a person who's a strong manager. And there's a few other aspects. So part of my master's degree was a lot of education on analyzing data and looking at statistical evidence and how to determine if that was valid, because if anyone who's taken a statistics class knows that you can make the data say whatever you want it to say.
Right.
Exactly.
So
and you can have a survey that points somebody in a certain direction
Yes.
without getting the information that is actually needed.
And that kind of brings me to why I decided to run, actually. So as a nonprofit developer, I've had a lot of experience on the development side, and I've had a lot of positive experiences working with the city. I've had a lot of, and then I've also served I was on the ARPA committee as well as the sustainability committee. And
what's the ARPA committee?
The ARPA committee was a group of people that were selected to help decide how the American Rescue Act plan money for Grand Junction was allotted. And so we went through lots of different proposals. We looked at what projects were able to utilize one-time funding to impact the most people, and we had guidelines that should try to help identify which projects would fit into that bracket the best. And that was a really positive experience. I felt like we had a lot of communication with City Council throughout the process. Several times we presented to all of council, and I felt like they understood the reasons that we had selected certain projects over others, and I felt like that was a positive experience. But I've also been in a lot of stakeholder groups where I feel like the information from the stakeholders doesn't always get to City Council. So some of my strengths are in fixing broken systems, and obviously this is the city is a bigger system than, it's going to be a bigger fix and more not necessarily something that I personally can fix.
Right.
But I believe in transparency, communication, fiscal accountability, and just transparency. And those are things that I brought with Habitat, and we've reorganized our culture at work to be really supportive of those values. And I think that's what our city needs right now.
Right.
So I feel like everybody has good intentions, but I feel like the information from the public and doesn't always get all the way to city council. And then if decisions are being made with data that hasn't been fully explored or is targeted to show information one way or the other, then how can city council make a valid decision that benefits our city?
Excuse me.
Okay, so I'm going to go back on some of that.
Yeah.
Because Dennis Simpson, that you are running to replace, that was his goal too, was fiscal accountability and transparency, and I felt like he really did work at that. However, when you're saying I don't think a lot of the information, so I'm going to pick on 4th and 5th Street.
Yeah.
They have had a lot of information,
Yes.
and they have had data that's questionable.
Yes.
And they also use a lot of consulting firms for something that if you're making a change for Grand Junction, why don't you know enough to determine whether that change is good or necessary?
So the thing, consultants are, first of all, very expensive.
Right.
And they are not local.
Right.
So they're coming from other places, and whether, they don't mean necessarily to have biased information, but if you've been working, sometimes they do. But in general, if you put out an RFP to get a consultant, they basically know what you're looking to get from that RFP.
Okay, so what's an RFP?
It's a request for proposal. So the city has to put those out before they hire the consultants. And so those usually list what they're trying to have found. And so you're going to have consultants that are like, well, we can find that information for you. And so first of all, I don't think we need a consultant for every single decision that's being made. There's lots of very knowledgeable people in our community and lots of people who care a whole lot, which is part of what made me love it here so much. And so reaching out to our community first makes more sense to me than to spend $500,000 to get a consultant to come in to tell us something that doesn't necessarily work for Grand Junction. And there's
it's actually kind of one of those things where you hire a consultant to get the results that you want.
Yes. Yes, you said that. That's what I was trying to say in my long-winded response. So yes. Yeah.
Sorry, I just break things down.
Thank you.
You're very
I appreciate
polite.
it. Yes. So I think that's where I think we need to look at, what the goals of our city are, and I don't mean the city, but I mean of
the community.
The community.
Right.
And be keeping that in mind as we plan for the future, because
Well, I think it needs to be more than keeping it
Yes.
in mind. I think it needs to be what we're doing.
well, that should be the guiding
principle.
Yeah, the guiding principle is what do the people who live here want, and
And how would you find that out?
So I'm part of many of the groups I've been in will have very targeted community feedback. So if you're trying to find out something that may, and this is just an example, not a real example, but like say you were trying to say we need more bike lanes, then they're asking the biking community, they're asking people who are very invested in that, but they're not getting general feedback.
Right.
So then the data that we get is not reflective of the entire community. And it was interesting because I was thinking when the Munchies opened, I was like, this would be a great place to get community feedback. If the city set up a table here and got feedback, you have so many different people, but like looking at different ways to really engage the full scope of our population.
And so again, what would you do?
So I think that it should start with getting community feedback first, and then creating a plan, and then getting community feedback on the plan before anything's ever implemented. I think 4th and 5th Street, a lot of money went into that, and very, very seldom do I run into somebody who likes the changes? Even people who are road bikers or, are commuting on bicycle are saying that it doesn't feel safe for them to ride in the current situation that is there.
Which makes me wonder, did they feel safer before than after?
Yeah, and I think that would be a really valid, informative survey to put out and see, and then that would make sense to go to the cycling community and say, do you feel safer with these changes now or before, or would a different option have made you feel safer?
Yeah, and I think that's what we're missing here.
Well,
that's an ingredient that's gone.
Yeah.
And one that I always have a problem with is who you identify as a stakeholder, because the stakeholders are not only the bicyclists, the stakeholders are the people driving.
Right.
Because they may not feel safe either, that they don't know what the bicyclist is going to do. Cody Kennedy had that great video of the biker in the one lane, and not the biker, the guy on the moped.
Yeah.
You don't call them mopeds, do you?
I think they're
scooters.
scooters.
Yeah. I always pick the oldest term. Like my daughters go, Mom, it's not an annual anymore. It's a yearbook. And they're like,
Dated.
Okay,
Sorry, we can't help that.
Fine. Just
It happens to all of us.
Ignore me. But they're probably the more important stakeholder too. And what other alternatives are there, and to make the biker feel safer, or how does the biker have to adapt?
Right.
It's not all about one section.
There's just so many different elements there, because the parallel cars make it so you can't see.
Right.
As a pedestrian, I'm assuming as a cyclist, I've only walked and driven through it, but I have a lot of trouble at various places. And then even if I'm able to parallel park.
And is that a hard thing for you?
I can parallel park, but
but
I can parallel park, but people don't want to let you parallel park is the problem, because you stop, you pull up, and then you have 15 cars behind you, and they're honking, and they're upset that you've stopped, and they won't let you, and then they push up behind you so you can't.
I was going to say, that's exactly what they do.
And you can't back into it. So I had to loop around 3 times the other day to go to a business on 4th, and finally I just parked somewhere else because I'm like, I can't. But then even when you go to pull out, you can't see as well as you could. And I know there's times with the angled spots that it's hard, but it was less hard than the way it is now.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
And that's just an example of, in my opinion, City Council ignoring what people have said, and Trent Prowl ignoring and saying it's all about safety, it's all about reducing speed, it's doing what we want, but your data is on 2 different sides.
Well, I think there's ways to reduce speed without making it more dangerous. And if it's about safety, then I don't think that this is a good solution, because it feels unsafe for everybody.
Right.
So, I think, and I think that looking at those things before you spend that much money on a trial helps. Those are taxpayer dollars that we spend, and we shouldn't be spending them flippantly. We should be looking at, we should have done that conversation before it happened versus after everyone's upset.
And we're looking at making more changes now to rectify what we've already done. We're chasing good money after bad.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, a lost cause. But then...
And I do have a question on that, and you may not know. They have... I know that the support is let's change that and make the bicycle lane like it was before, so that you don't have it by the parking anymore. My question is, because we know we don't have money to finish that project at all, do the grants that they look at say, if you're going to utilize this grant, you have to have a bike lane?
A lot of grants do. I know just from looking at quite a few of them, a lot of them do want to have that emphasis on the multimodal transportation and being able to have bike lanes factored in. And I don't think anyone has a problem with a bike lane.
Oh, I do. Well, I do on certain streets.
Well, yes, but
you don't.
But if you have it in a way like, there's certain streets where you drive by, you don't even notice that it's there, and and
coming down 7th is fine.
And in my opinion, what I would have thought would have been a starting point for that project would have been to do something similar to 7th, just because it's already there. I'm not saying that would have been the solution, but people are already used to driving it. They understand roundabouts, for the most part, and it's similar to what's already there. So, like, aesthetically, it makes more sense. But again, I'm not starting from the beginning point,
Right.
But that if you were going to change the entire road, it seems like it would make more sense to make it more similar to what is already existing in the community.
Well, and I think you have to take in, I know a group that feels like they aren't represented by that is Orchard Mesa. Because if you're coming down Fifth, it's a thoroughfare. It's like in any community, you have certain streets that are the major thoroughfare. And so to say to a bicyclist, you maybe would feel safer over on 3rd or on 6th than go on that street, instead of saying to everybody else, because I don't think that 30 or 35 is too fast on 4 lanes that you have, like on Grand. 35, we're saying, well, we've slowed them down. Did we need to slow them down? I mean, that's the first question, is do they even need to be slowed down there? And what other things do other people have to do? Because so much of our community, we know about 1% are the bikers. And even in the paper the other day, it was a cute comment. I saw one. I know.
I haven't seen one yet.
But when you're doing that, look at the majority of your population, because families are not going to be biking to work.
Right.
Older people are not biking to their appointments. So you have this small minority that you're spending an inordinate amount of money on.
And not only that, out in my district on the eastern side, we aren't riding our bikes downtown. Like, we're not riding from there downtown. And so it does feel like that side of town doesn't get as much attention, and everyone's paying tax dollars in. So I think, in my thought, it would make more sense to do basic road maintenance across the entire city, instead of doing these very expensive targeted projects that are only benefiting small portions of our population.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%.
Me
but then
too.
That's me too.
Yeah.
Okay, so now then we're going to switch gears just a little bit on to impact fees.
That's a fun one.
What is your opinion about what they are trying to do with the impact fees?
So I'm in an interesting position as a nonprofit developer, because I can kind of see a little bit of both sides of the situation. So it's just a very complicated issue in general. I think that raising the impact fees to the maximum defendable limit doesn't make sense at all. The linkage fee is just too high, and this is coming from somebody who works in affordable housing, and it would be great to have that money would be funding affordable housing fund, for the city to have money for affordable housing projects.
Okay, can I stop you there though? Is that money, again, to me it seems like the city is competing with private businesses and even with your nonprofit, because you told me that you're raising most of your money through private funds and through donors and that sort of thing, which is where I think that should come from, not the city saying we are going to pay and we're going to use that linkage fee to pay for affordable housing when it's in competition with.
Yeah, and again, even as an affordable developer, I feel like you're
making it not affordable.
It's just much too high of a linkage fee, and the linkage fee is only on commercial development. I say only, but it's which is going to impact bringing new businesses to our community, which will increase, and that will affect the number of jobs we have, being able to raise the amount of income that people are able to get. If we have different businesses coming in, that helps increase that. So in order to have a community that is affordable, in general, we need to have new workforce coming in. We need to be able to recruit good doctors and good teachers and be able to keep them, and so it kind of just cancels itself out if you're putting that in to then build affordable housing, but you're not able to help provide means for the people that live here.
And the linkage fees is something that's totally foreign to our way of life anyway.
Yeah.
It's something that has been brought in from larger cities,
Yeah,
if you will.
From resort towns,
Yes.
like
Yes.
Telluride and Vail and those places where the people at work can't afford to live there.
Right, and when you have such a difference between the income of the people that work there and the housing, and it's definitely a resort town problem, but
Right.
we don't want to create that problem here.
Right.
And I know I've said this in a couple conversations with people. We're not a resort town.
No.
So things that work in a resort town doesn't mean that they will work here. Or that we should try to make them work here. And I think that's what I feel like is that we've been trying to force things from other communities on to Grand Junction. And I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a breath and saying, is this right for Grand Junction versus just like moving as quickly as possible to get things done.
So when you're working with Habitat, do you have any problems? I know many builders and friends of ours that are in construction, they say that a lot of it too is just what the planning, and not just the planning department, because I think they get a lot of their input from city council as well, but all of the regulations and all of the ideas that, well, you can't do this in 18 months to get your permits.
So it's not as much the permits as it's going through the planning process to be able to start your infrastructure so that you can get ready to actually get the permits to build. It's that planning piece that's taking so long. So
and is it too complicated or complex?
So the process is that like all of the different departments will weigh in on the application, and they'll give feedback. So the fire department will say you need to do this. The police might say this. Planning might say you need to do this. And so then you have all these notes, and then you go and you fix these things, and then you resubmit it. Then they keep coming back with rounds of additional comments that weren't in the first set of comments, and so then it just keeps going and going and going until finally you get somewhere. And so I think it's being, and that's where it gets frustrating as a developer. They're like, well, I made all the changes you told me, and now you're coming back with another set of changes.
So you need to streamline it.
Yeah, yeah, and then
you need to say, okay, you need to pay attention this time because you get one shot to tell us what we need to do and make it clear.
Right.
And then,
and if you have guidelines for time frames, that would be helpful as well. Saying, you turn it in, then we have X amount of time to get back to you, and then you have X amount of time, which is the part that the developers are held to. Like they have to get theirs back in a certain amount of time. So it only makes sense that it goes both ways. And I know there's been a lot of conversations getting closer to that. Closer to that conversation. So
we're getting close to having a conversation about that. That doesn't sound very promising.
There have been conversations. I mean, we're getting closer to maybe it being heard and understood. And I think that it's a hard process. So for Habitat, we haven't had to go through the planning process on that stage with the city since we are currently building in an already approved plan. But I know, for example, another nonprofit that's been going through the process to try to build something for our community that's very much needed, and it's not in housing, but it's very much needed, and it's been I think she said like 18 months, and and that's very hard and very frustrating, especially for a nonprofit that's trying to get these services into the community.
And in an economical way, because the longer it takes, the more it costs.
Right, exactly.
Well, and you tend to get so frustrated that you say, that's it, I'm done, and walk away. And if it's needed for the community, that's just such a waste.
Yeah, it very much is.
It's a waste.
Yeah.
Are there, because one of the things that you talked about that you had been part of, well, before I do that, I'm going to come back.
Yeah.
So you attended, I was really excited that you attended this workforce innovation. Is that the first time you've seen that? How do you think it's different? What was the value?
Yeah. So the Workforce Summit was really great. John Marshall started with kind of talking about the updates that CMU has coming and the things that they have planned.
Okay, some of those, just give us a couple.
So I think most of us have heard this already, but if you are in a household that your income is $70,000 or less, that CMU will cover the entire tuition for the student. And I think that's just an amazing...
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing opportunity for a lot of our community. And so I thought that was really great. But they have a lot of different things. Like they have these semi-trucks that they have complete training modules in there. And so they can go, I think they said they have a welding truck, and they just have different skills, and they can go out to the community and be on site off of campus and allow people to be able to learn how to learn these trades. So,
and that was John Marshall talking about that through Western Colorado.
Yeah, and so then we broke into different sessions, and the one that I found the most value in was talking about innovative benefits for employees. And so there was Emily with Housing Resources, and the Incubator Center was there, and Chaffa, and there was a finance person that I can't remember where he was from off the top of my head, but they were talking about just different ways to offer things to make employees feel appreciated and encourage lesser turnover for positions. And the one that I thought was really neat was the Workforce Innovation Project that the Business Incubator Center is now offering. And they basically will cater to your business and then offer trainings for the staff to help support their growth. And it's so it's 12 weeks, and they have 720 different curriculums that they can use to help upskill employees. And there's no cost to the business. And it's just an offering that they have. So I thought that was a really, really cool partnership. And because they do all sorts of different things. They can do it retail based, or they can do it based on doing communication, networking, those kinds of skills, or they can do more hands-on courses and like different computer skills and things like that too. So there was a whole lot of different things they can do, and then they had skilled trade type things as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really, really cool program. And I've worked with the Business Incubator Center quite a bit, and not as much as I could, and so we're definitely going to be talking more. But I thought that was a really cool program that I hadn't heard of. So
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Now going back to your you were on two committees, and again, you talked about how when we had like the biking lanes for 4th and 5th, it was mainly bikers that were invited to be on that.
So not necessarily, and the stakeholder group for the sustainability was pretty diverse. It was the community feedback that was more targeted.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So by diverse, who all did you think that made the diversity complete? Now you're going back to the sustainability and adaptation plan that you were on, and so who was on it, and why did you think? Because there are several things that they did in that plan that I think are not good for a community. I mean, just one like parking meters and increasing the cost because we want to make people walk more, and we want to...
Which none of those were things that were discussed as part of the plan. So basically we all came together and had a lot of ideas, and then the consultant gave us what the plan was, and then I saw very little change from the consultant's first presentation. Like, yes, there would have been some paragraphs or some information, but that was actually, when I was looking at it, I'm like, so we got feedback from the farmers markets and from the high school students.
Well, from the library.
Yeah. But they went
went to the high school
and got the high school students. Yeah. So and then they did branch it out after. But I'm like, this isn't enough data to say if our community supports this or not. And so I felt like additional feedback opportunities were needed.
High school students, that's got me perplexed.
Well, they're the ones that are going to have to deal with what we leave behind.
Exactly, but how are they mature enough to actually be able to think that far ahead.
Well, and a lot of things.
And there are some. I understand
well,
that.
and I think it
but-
depends on how you ask too. Like if you say, "Do you want to protect resources in our community?" Who says no to that?
Right.
Nobody.
You know, do you want to? Is water conservation important to you? Nobody's going to say no. Like waste all the water.
Right.
So I think it all just depends on the approach too.
Ask the loaded
So,
questions.
yeah.
You're going to get the loaded answers.
And so I think that it's just, and I know they did go back out and get go to different businesses, and they set up a lot more opportunities throughout the process, but I still felt like it was not representative of the full community feedback.
I would have to agree. So on 2, you were part. How do you feel now? Because you were apparently on the decision making with creating the temporary resource center, because that's who got the funds.
Nope, that was not part of our decision.
Okay,
That was
See,
not.
that's good
That
to know
was not
too.
recommended. That there was one project that fell through, and then that was a decision that was not made by the ARPA committee.
And see, people would think that.
Yeah.
Point the finger at you
Nope.
and say no.
So that wasn't a project that was presented. It didn't go through the application process. It wasn't reviewed.
Okay.
That was not part of the ARPA. They used ARPA dollars, but that was not part of the ARPA
Right.
committee's
Decision.
recommended
Or recommend.
plans.
Okay.
So do you feel like many of the committees that you have served on, they don't utilize the input that you give to them?
Like I said, I felt like the ARPA, besides what they did after the fact with that, I felt like they really did look at the projects that we recommended and understood the ones that we were saying why they weren't ready for the funding. And so I felt like at that point, but we did have a lot more interaction with city council in that. So in the other ones, I felt like the reason I joined the sustainability advisory group was because I wanted to make sure that we were considering the cost of housing with the changes that were being proposed. Because every time you increase energy requirements, it costs more for the developer. Anytime you make, and a lot of those regulations impact the cost to build homes. And so that was my concern and the lens I was looking at it through. And I know I had talked with the consultants, and they said, well, maybe we should do an affordable housing strategy. And I said, yes, that would be great. We should have an affordable, because in my mind, a sustainable community is one where you can afford to live there.
Right. Good. That is so novel.
Yeah. And so they went back and forth, and I gave them information. Then that was not a strategy that was meted out or included. So, we went through brainstorming basically, and then I didn't hear anything else till we got through the process.
So while you sit on city council, then you would be one to say, I don't have enough information. I cannot vote on this because I do not have enough information. You would be able to do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And how would you see your role differently than the current city council does with the city manager and staff?
Well, I think it's already starting to change a little bit with Mike Bennett coming on. He seems to be encouraging communication versus discouraging communication. And I feel like that was sort of the way of the works for a while, where things were directed just to the city manager, and then the city manager kind of communicated between staff and city council, and that's a process that doesn't work for me. So I think that Mike seems already, just with what he did with the impact fee stakeholder group, they requested that they were able to actually talk to all of the council, and he set that up. And I think having those opportunities will help get better information to city council as well.
It's a beginning.
It's a beginning, but it's a kind of an exciting beginning, right? Because it's different.
It's different.
It is much different.
Yeah.
So what are we're giving you got on city council, okay, and you've got a majority, because one of the things Dennis didn't have was, without the majority, he couldn't be heard, he couldn't get his things on the agenda. So we're going to give you the majority. What are your ideas that you want to see implemented? Do you have anything that...
So again, I'm not running on a personal agenda. I have no personal gain from this. Actually, I'm giving up a lot of the little bit of free time I did have, but I'm not benefiting financially. I'm a nonprofit business. I don't have
You haven't got an extra grind.
I don't have an extra
Yay.
grind. So really, my major priority is making sure that we are prioritizing the decisions that on what we're doing with the city and the taxpayer money appropriately. That we're looking at needs versus wants, and that we're taking care of the community's needs before we start looking at
A pet project?
Yes, a pet project. And I have no pet projects. So what I want to do is protect the culture of Grand Junction and make it possible for it to continue to be the place that I fell in love with and that I know a lot of people are very attached to. So I think I'm not, there's no way to prevent people from moving here. There's no way to prevent growth. And if we did prevent growth, then we'd have the opposite problem where the city started dying. We don't want that to happen either. But I think that it's very important for us to plan for the growth in a I don't want to say sustainable way, but in a
regulated way, perhaps?
Well, just in a planned way where it makes sense for our community. So if you don't say this is what we want as a community, then you're going to get whatever happens. And so I think that as a community and as a city, we need to say this is what the important parts of our city are, and how do we plan for growth in a way that protects that.
And so what do you think? Because I think it's a little broad to say
It is.
the culture.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean to you?
So I think it's important that people are still able to interact with each other and that they feel like that they're able to go places. I think that we can't make it so hard to drive places that people stop going there. But like what I've found when I moved here, I've lived in the South, I've lived in the Northeast, I've lived on the West Coast, I've lived in Arizona. And all of those places, people are just different in general. Here, you can smile at someone and they smile and wave back. And, it's not super, super slow pace of things, but it's slow enough where you can have a conversation in line at the grocery store. Or you can hold a door for somebody, and I think those are the people that are here are genuinely kind-hearted overall. And I think we've had so much just like, it's just very, I'm trying to think of the word.
Confrontational or?
We're just very divided right now, divided. And I've talked to people on both sides all over the place, and most people want the same thing. They want to feel like they have been communicated with, that their taxpayer dollars are being respected and used appropriately. They want transparency and they want to build trust. And I think that's what's broken right now.
They want to have a voice.
They want to have a voice.
Make sure that when I say something, my voice is heard and not just, what do you know?
Rather than getting up for your 3 minutes at a
Exactly.
city council meeting and saying what you have to say, and they just go on, okay, next.
Well, and they make, there's no response, there's no conversation, and it's basically up to the individual council members to decide if they're going to follow up on any of those comments. And and I don't believe in wasting people's time, and I feel like there's a lot of like checking the box on things versus actually engaging with the community and trying to get that information on what is important to the majority of people in our community.
I think all those sound really good. I know we're kind of mean. Go ahead.
You're mean?
You get to see.
No, one of the more specific things I do want to look at, so I think that we need to really be looking at the budget.
Yes.
It not being balanced. It's only balanced one out of the next 5 years, and that's a concern for me.
Right.
And so in my mind, the first thing you do is look for ways to reduce unnecessary expenses, reprioritize projects so that you have money for the things that you need versus the things that you want or certain people want. And so I think that's where, when I say fiscal accountability, I think we really need to break that down a little bit more and figure out a way to balance the budget before we start taking on additional debt or expenses. But one of the things I do think we need to do is revisit the comprehensive plan, because city staff are following the guideline that was approved, and they're just doing their jobs a lot of time. And the guideline is what they're doing.
Right.
So if you read the comprehensive plan, that they're
Following it.
they're following the
And
comprehensive
the
plan.
sustainability plan
Yep.
comes right underneath it.
And Lisa and I are
then
quite
the
well versed in
Yeah.
that.
So I think that's something that was 2020. We're now 2025. We're halfway through. So maybe we take another look at that. But I think it's really important that our comprehensive plan matches what we want for our community.
There you go.
Right. And wasn't just decided. I know we've talked to several other people that were on the committee for the comprehensive plan, and they said that isn't the plan that we intended at all.
Yeah. I think it was presented in a very different light. And again, I wasn't there for it. I've just heard third party for that. So I can't really speak to it. But I know that the plan we have is creating the projects that we've been getting.
And the sustainability, because I do think like the parking meters, you could see them coming out, all of the things coming out that related to the sustainability and the one and the comprehensive plan coming out almost even before it was passed, and going, well,
So that those are really what and I'm not going in saying I want to do this, and this. I want to have a balanced budget for the city. I want to make sure we're respecting and appropriately using taxpayer dollars, and I really want to make sure that we are prioritizing projects, but in the correct way. But
The city needs to stay in its lane.
and I think that's I think it really is something that we need to reevaluate is but like the public feedback from these projects is from, and I like I said, I've been talking to people, anyone who wants to talk to me I will meet with, and I've heard a lot of different perspectives on it, but it's not a partisan issue. It's we have X amount of money, how are we using it? Do the people who are contributing taxes understand how those dollars are being used? How hard is it for them to figure that out?
well, they can't.
They can't.
I mean, Dennis said he couldn't even get the financials in June, that when the fiscal year ended in December.
Yeah.
So
so if you're a person who is not overly paying attention to everything that's happening, which most people don't.
Well, can't.
They can't.
Yeah, they can't.
Yeah.
But that's the same thing. I was talking with, somebody who's a downtown business owner, and they were like, well, we didn't have any information before the Unhoused Resource Center came up. It just was like, we're starting it.
Right.
And they were saying, well, how do I know? Because the city was saying it was made public, this information was available. And she said, but how do I find it? Because I couldn't find any information. And I'm like, well, what I do is I have every other Friday marked on my calendar, and I go and look at the agendas for all of the meetings and try to see what's being discussed. And if there's something that is even like slightly close to something that is directly impactful to me, then I'm making sure that I'm going to those council meetings, those workshops, and being able to hear the information in as direct of a format as I can. But again, that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it doesn't take a lot of time or effort to send a letter out to the businesses downtown. It doesn't take a lot of time to, have one meeting where you invite the people who are going to be directly impacted by something to come and have a voice.
I like that idea.
Right.
It actually
Right.
makes good sense. Common sense. What the heck?
And
It's not common anymore.
Right. And having even more, Scott on city council, I bless his heart, when he was on about 29 Road, he was adamantly opposed to it. And we suggested that he said, well, why don't you go to different places and find out all over the community? And he did set up community events in different sections of the city so he could debate that. And I thought, that is so helpful. So how do you plan to know what I do, like Cody does his Tuesdays and Thursdays. I think that's a lot, but I love it.
I'm hoping to have at least one day a week where I can do that.
That would be great.
I don't think I can do two.
I don't either.
No,
He's retired.
an hour's time out of your day is quite valuable.
Yeah.
So,
Again, I will, regardless, if any person reaches out to me, I will set up something, to have a conversation. I have lots of them scheduled. That's why I had to stop drinking coffee, because I was having too many coffee meetings.
Yeah.
So I've switched to decaf tea for a while. But yeah, so it's but I will meet with anyone. I'm not running, this is a nonpartisan election. It's a nonpartisan position, and I don't think that that should be impacting decisions. I think that where we are going to see growth and progress and positive change is somewhere in the middle, where we can all kind of have a conversation, and that's one of my strengths, is getting people to meet in the middle and have conversations.
Right. So it should be for the good of the community. It should not be good for the individual.
Yep.
So that's where you come in with your nonpartisan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So anything else you want to add? Yeah.
No, I think that I'm excited. So I feel like I can.
Any way that you want people to get in touch with you?
Oh, yeah,
What's the best
yeah.
way for them to know where you are or who you are? Or...
Yeah, so I have more information on my campaign web page, which is www.laurel4gj.com. And my Facebook is the same. And if you go to the website, it'll have a little button you can click to go to the Facebook as well. I would love just a little bit of donations would help, because I do want to. Well, and even though I'm running unopposed, I really do want to put in some effort to go to door and encourage people to vote. I think we've had a very low voter turnout, and a lot of people who really care about the community. So that's part of my goal moving through April, is to really just encourage people to get out and vote, no matter who they vote for. So
Great, very good, great. Well, you've been watching Mesa County Compass. This is the facts as we see them, the truth as we know it. You decide. Thanks, Laurel.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.